With any love for an IP, it's only natural to try and dig into more media based on it. Unless you're this guy. Dog, this is the series that literally had to cater to the whims of corporate consumerism in order to run. With an IP like Gundam, the games are bound to be phenomenal. Let's just check who holds the IP. Oh, well, maybe the current offerings on Steam are decent. It doesn't help that there's a million DLCs. Maybe it's just bad ports. Thank you, CumDickBitch42069. Maybe Gaben just isn't carrying any of the good stuff. Okay, so maybe the pickings are slim. Let's start with Gundam Evolution. Bandai said this was going to be one of their core pillars for Gundam going forward, so it must be good. After 1 year, the game is gone. Forever. They cross-dueled this bitch. Bandai's current offerings for gaming content sure can be legally classified as video games. And, well, when you look at their other financial endeavors... Wait. This is real? This actually happened. Well, at least this guy embezzled less money than the actual company. Let's start things off by talking about Evolution, since that'll be the quickest one to cover. Originally, I intended to cover Evolution in this video alone when I began conceptualizing it, but then they announced the end of service, and when I played the game to gather footage, I found myself stuck in a rabbit hole that I never truly fell all the way through before it disappeared. If you want my more in-depth thoughts on the game, watch my video on it. There's some details I got wrong in it because of the little time I had with the game, paired with the fact that its history wasn't super documented. Real great now that it's gone forever, but my overall opinion remains the same. It was a game that no doubt had a never-ending laundry list of flaws. A lot of people didn't like the way the game felt, with the sense of scale being iffy, but in spite of any issues I had with the game myself, I still found it a blast to play. I really regret that I didn't play it sooner. I didn't mention this in my actual video on the game, but I was aware of the game when it came out. I wasn't into hero shooters or even Gundam at the time, so I didn't feel like trying it out. Eventually I decided to get into Gundam. I then see the Heavy Arms announcement and start thinking about trying the game for myself. But I talked myself out of it, and this is where I really think Evolution messed up. The reason I talked myself out of it was because of two things. One, this is a hero shooter. The perception of this game was Gundam Overwatch, which in my mind meant this was going to be an unfun, toxic experience if I didn't have a full squad of friends to play with. Which, problem two, I have no friends with Gundam as an interest. I saw the Dynasty trailer and I was so tempted to pick the game up, but then I remembered why I talked myself out of it the first time. Also, I can't snipe to save my life. So this would have been the worst reason to pick up the game, since I cited toxicity as a reason I didn't want to play. It's only when they announced the end of service that I decided to pick it up. And when I did, it wasn't Gundam Overwatch. It was fun. It didn't really feel toxic. If anything, it felt inviting. So I can only imagine how many people didn't bother to pick up the game for the same reason. Bandai let the Overwatch but Gundam narrative control the perception of the game, and that's probably the biggest reason it failed to catch on. Granted, Overwatch 2 was fumbling the bag, and some people say, oh, that's a reason to pick it up because it's Gundam but Overwatch, and it's not Overwatch. For people like me, anything that was considered Overwatch, why would I play that? And I can't say I'm a majority, but I do have to wonder how many players didn't pick up the game for the same reason. They didn't try to change people's perception of the game or even get more people interested in it. They just gave up and were shocked when they suddenly weren't making millions off their putrid monetization scheme. Every time I look at footage of this game, I get the urge to play it. And well, can't do that anymore. Really wish this game didn't get wiped from existence because of unfettered greed. They even promoted the damn gacha an hour after the end of service. And oh boy, will we be talking about that. Before we move on from Evolution, I might as well use it as an opportunity for a talking point, because as you'll see, it won't really be relevant with every other entry. Evolution fulfilled a very specific niche for me in being an FPS. Near every single Gundam game is some form of third-person action game. Don't get me wrong, this makes perfect logical sense. The series is built upon the designs of the mobile suits, so naturally the fans still want to gawk at them while playing the game. But personally for me, I want a more immersive experience. Reflected from the show, actual pilots have a first-person view while they're in a mobile suit, so I find FPS to be a more immersive gameplay style for a Gundam game. Unfortunately, it's only been used for a hero shooter where there's not really anything to get immersed in. To my knowledge, there isn't another FPS Gundam game, and with Bandai likely deeming Evolution as a failure, I wouldn't be shocked if they convinced themselves that FPS doesn't work for Gundam. You know, companies, failure means it doesn't work, and not that we made a horrible mistake that jeopardized everything. The only ongoing offering of Gundam gaming content is Battle Op 2. I saw a friend playing Battle Op 2. I decided to ask them about it. This is our first interaction in years. This was still quicker than the time to find a match in the game. This game is 50 gigs. That's precious real estate, so this better be good. Evolution was also 50 gigs. Can we start paying people to compress games, please? Wait. It's 20! That's a good sign. I start playing the game, and the frames are just... I have to finish the tutorial first in order to change the settings. Gotta love when a game does that. After I'm finally free from tutorial hell and can fix the input delay and horrible frames, I can now see what CumDickBitch42069 was talking about. Even before I made the graphics abysmal, it looked horrendous. Attempting to find a match will likely result in... Great. Can't even play the game. Upon being booted back to the camp, the music brought about a bizarre revelation. It sounded like a track that wouldn't be out of place in a Sonic 06 open world area. This game is just Sonic 06. Bland, ugly textures, generic, lifeless NPCs standing around doing nothing. A small open world area with nothing to actually explore or even do in it. Sitting in never-ending loading menus. Now, if only the game's control had half the movement speed of 06. Since I couldn't find a match, I played around in practice and test modes to try and get a feel for the game. It feels like ass. Each suit controls relatively differently, so I can't judge the game as a whole off that, but I can say it feels horrid for guns to have like 1 to maybe 4 shots at most, before they have to spend 6 seconds reloading. There's also a delay on successive strikes with the beam saber. They want you to swap weapons while reloading, but there's also a goddamn cooldown on swapping, and oh boy! The other weapons are egregiously bad. I figure the game wants you to make your own weapon loadout better, since you have to roll for them. I get it. But you should probably demo a better one so I don't immediately wish the gunplay was more akin to traditional shooters. Battle Up also leans into the aspect of Gundam games that I absolutely despise. The idea that mobile suits have to control like hunks of junk rather than state-of-the-art military technology. The balance between making suits feel weighty while also still having fluid movement. Gundam games always seem to struggle with this for some reason. They either control way too smoothly and fail to capture a sense of scale fitting giant mechs, or control like absolute piss-grime clunk in order to create the illusion of a grander scale. I got the sense the game could be fun if I just got better at it, but the weapons and movement are a deal breaker for me. The clunky movement just doesn't feel fun to control, and that's the most important part of a game's gameplay. Never finding a match is a pretty hard deal breaker too, though. The fact that you can get out of your mobile suit and repair it mid-battle is a cool immersive idea, but that brings me to my next point. This game feels like it has no strong identity of its own. It really just feels like what it is. A hollow action game using a gacha system with a Gundam IP slapped onto it. No wonder this guy was talking like this. These games feel soulless. They don't have to be. It's just Bandai not caring about the quality or vision of their products. Like usual. I wish Bandai could make a single good Gundam game. Huh, hey! Gundam Extreme Versus is perhaps one of the cooler titles, being a 3D arena fighter that, get this, is actually good. It's a 2v2 team-oriented game. The goal is to lower the enemy's gauge until it's fully depleted. In order to do that, you take down the other team like you would assume. However, this is where the game's design gets interesting. Each mobile suit has a specific cost attributed to it. Depending on that cost, when you get your ass beat, it'll determine how much your loss depletes the gauge, meaning it's discouraged for both players to get in high-cost suits, as it can likely end in a much quicker loss. Encouraging teams to set roles for each other in battle. This is a phenomenal design for a Gundam game. Just one problem. This game isn't available on PC, and I don't own a PS4 or 5, nor a capturing device. I'm a fraud YouTuber. Oh, and once again, no friends that care about Gundam. So I'm out of luck. Maxi Boost On, the current available entry, is also an outdated game. Extreme Versus is super popular in Japan, which still has arcades, with Extreme Versus being one of, if not the most popular arcade games. So Bandai cycles in console ports once they become the obsolete entry in the series, because obviously you want to play the shiny new one, and you gotta go to arcades to do that. If there were more support for this series in the West, I could genuinely see it doing really well, but Bandai would rather actively sabotage their products rather than promote them. If this sounds interesting to you, check out videos from people who've actually played the game and give it a shot for yourself. Now, if you think I was finally starting to sound positive, well, not anymore. U.C. Engage is a mobile game gacha, so it's already implied it's garbage from a fundamental level. This entire thing is autoplay. You pick pilots and suits and place them in position based on a rock-paper-scissors system. The game has some phenomenal crisp animation, and it's all wasted on this uninteresting and unengaging game. Bandai, the master of financial investment. And as the game's title implies, it's entirely focused on Universal Century content. Unfortunately for me, the only UC series I've watched are Unicorn, 8th MS Team, and Zeta, in that order, alongside movies like Narrative, Thunderbolt, Hathaway's Flash, and F91. I also read the first Crossbone manga solely because the Crossbone designs go hard. With my limited and entirely confused perception of UC, this game does try to categorize and create an experience to guide people through all the events of UC. Something I can commend on paper, but it's a gacha. Can't exactly say the real intent in doing so is commendable. There's really not a whole lot to say other than gachas suck. Why does every game with Engage in the title suck ass? Speaking of Fire Emblem, SD Gundam G Generations is an SRPG series akin to Fire Emblem, with G Generation Crossrays being the most recent entry. There's also Battle Alliance, which is more recent, but that's a hack and slash. I can't think of any other games that could be doing this formula, but better. It doesn't have the G Generation moniker, so I figure Bandai's deciding to branch out with the SD formula. I'm not gonna play these. Instead, let's use this as a chance to talk about older games. Ones you can't acquire for a reasonable price. Luckily for me, I know a venture capitalist by the name of Amulata, in line with all the dumbass names we've been getting, so you know they're a reputable source. I chose to play Overworld on the PSP as it's the easiest version of the game for me to access. And I gotta say, it's pretty damn fun. The only problem I really felt like the game had, at least from the perspective of someone just trying it out for the first time, is that the UI is very flat and dull. It can't be overstated how important a good UI is, especially when it comes to turn-based and strategy RPGs, since they're games where the primary gameplay loop is staring at and interacting with the UI. The presentation and combat animations is great. Honestly, if you're in the weird, hyper-specific niche of a Gundam and Fire Emblem fan that hasn't heard about these games, you should try it out. While I did look at Crossray's UI to check to see if it improved, I can't exactly say it's improved enough to be super eye-catching or satisfying to navigate. So I hope whenever the next title comes, they really tune up the UI and don't make it bloated. The next old series of games I want to discuss are the Dynasty Warrior spin-offs. This series of games spanned 3 entries. There was a special entry that was an improved version of the first with elements of 2, but that never came to the West. Unfortunately, these titles aren't super accessible. Granted, not all sellers are trying to make the Bezos bucks, but backwards compatibility is a bitch. And of course, no PC ports. Did you know? I lied to you earlier. There aren't 3 entries, but 4. It didn't receive an English dub for its voiceover, and the game had no advertising. So plenty of people, myself included, didn't even know the game existed. To top it all off, it was digital only for America specifically. It's the modern age. It can't be too bad to just import a copy from EU. Oh shit, a copy for 15 bucks? All I need is a Japanese education. I don't even got one of those in English. Welcome to my Dynasty Warrior Gundam Reborn Let's Play. Let's start. I think my game's soft-locked. Luckily for me, 7 years ago I picked up a copy of 3, and I even tried to 100% the game before eventually realizing there were trophies for online, which was a wasteland then, and sure as hell a battle op 2 now. This might as well be where I tell you my introduction to Gundam was the Dynasty Warrior games. Back when Hollywood Video and Blockbuster used to exist, I rented the first 2 games out and played the hell out of them as a kid, so I have a ton of nostalgia for these games. Also, I've never played a mainline Dynasty Warrior game. Let me know if I should in the comments, and I can make a video from the perspective of an ape who's only played the Gundam and Fire Emblem versions. Picking up 2 after it's been ages since I played it last, it hasn't mechanically aged the best. The camera is absolutely annoying, and combos can feel a bit stiff. That being said, it's leaps and bounds more fun to play than Battle Op. Tearing through a ton of grunt suits is just so satisfying, even if it's not exactly accurate to the source material. It controls and feels like the most fun Gundam game we've ever gotten. Go figure, because Bandai aren't the ones who made it. Suits feel like an apt scale while also moving pretty fluidly. With Dynasty Warriors also having a crossover between all the series, you actually get some fun interactions. Genuinely, I wish we could just get another Gundam entry from Dynasty Warriors because, in my brain, there's really nothing like it. Zooming around in a mobile suit, cutting down 100 grunts, and hearing all the destruction. Static sounds coming from downed suits, and seeing them be torn to shreds. It's just perfection. With that in mind, here's some game pitches that are definitely falling on deaf ears. But hey, maybe Bandai will learn to pay good developers to make their games for them, and they might hear this. A niche but fun idea for a game would be a video game adaptation of 8th MS Team. And I don't mean just making its plot into a standard game. I mean having a minor open world at the base where you do activities with the gang. 8th MS Team's strongest asset was the chemistry the entire crew had with one another. And what better way to adapt that to the medium of games than to have a life sim section dedicated towards emphasizing that aspect. The game's story could also serve to polish the original's pace. A big issue I had with 8th MS Team was that despite the characters actually having good chemistry with one another, a lot of their actual character growth and development felt severely rushed to fit the runtime. I don't see this game becoming a reality, given I don't think an 8th MS Team game is going to fly off shelves, but this setup could also be good for an entirely original story that is uniquely told in a game. I'm gonna say it. The children yearn for MMO slop. You could make one in a similar vein to Dragon Ball Xenoverse. I feel like that's the type of game that would bring in new fans left, right, front, and center. Having the ability to not only customize your own Gundam and fight in multiple different conflicts throughout the series' history, you can even have the ability to customize a suit under every faction in the series. Under the assumption this is like Xenoverse's plot, where occasionally you fight alongside the wrong side to correct history, it wouldn't make sense to pilot a Gundam in every single fight, so it would make sense for players to deploy in a suit that belongs to that army while also having personal customization to stand out. It's close to what Battle Op is, but you know, there's more depth to it other than dumping a ton of garbage on you in hopes you'll enjoy it. Speaking of MMOs, if not a Xenoverse-like one, why the hell isn't there one focused on Gunpla? The new promotional anime slop made me think while watching it, why haven't we just made this an actual game? Well, that's because they think their dumbass metaverse is on the level of this concept. Just don't ask what a CAD file is. There technically is something close to a Gunpla MMO, and that's Gundam Breaker. Gundam Breaker is a series where you build your own mobile suit and fight with it, just like Gunpla. New Gundam Breaker, the last entry, was apparently a massive downgrade, which is great when you consider the fact it's the only one they decided to bring to the West. Nothing but smart decisions from Bandai. I'm holding out hope the newly announced 4 ends up being peak and selling well. My only real issue with Breaker as a concept is that it leans into the whole figure aspect. being something more akin to Gacha Force, which I'm not gonna say doesn't have its own appeal, just personally, I'd like a more immersive MMO setting for a custom mobile suit game. With each announced Gundam product, it only grows more and more difficult to be optimistic. With Bandai constantly shoveling money into increasingly stupid projects, it really sucks because I do want Bandai to make more Gundam games to help build and maintain interest in the property. There are endless possibilities to explore with Gundam in the medium of video games, but Bandai lacks any creative vision, drive, or integrity at this point. Knowing their mindset, no matter how good the pitch for a game, Bandai will fumble it every time. So all I can really say is, Bandai, you can start real-world space projects, but your greed-tainted ambitions will always weigh down every endeavor much the same as Earth's gravity. So long as you continue to pursue profit at the expense of ingenuity, it will all come crashing back down on you in the end.